The whole fact that the world has been put on pause and we get a chance to sit down and really look at issues, I think it's important to look at how the Indigenous and Black community have been affected by the policing of cannabis over almost a century.
Cannabis has been legal here in Canada for almost 2 years now, but the simple possession charge is still having a lasting effect on racialized communities. Black and Indigenous people overrepresented when it comes to those who have had their lives forever changed by those charges.
It's not just getting pulled over or having a charge that simply shows up on your file, or as simple as that. It's how do you apply for jobs now? What if I want to be a cop? What if I want to apply for a job where they're looking for a criminal background check? How does that show up? Which a lot of the time is never explained.
Kenai in Kobe started using cannabis when he was about 16 years old to help with anxiety, especially in social settings. It was just a short time later that he had his first interaction with police in the Jane and Finch area for possession of a small amount of marijuana, and that's led to more police stops and searches.
And you still have the stigma hanging over that makes you a criminal. But now people that have policed that and have been involved heavily in the policing of that and have been heavily involved in having people incarcerated for that are simply reaping the benefits from a lot of these legal dispensaries.
Thank you.
Former Toronto Police Chief Julian Fantino, who once equated legalizing weed to legalizing murder, is one of the ex-law enforcement officers who went on to head a large medical cannabis company. He just resigned from the board of Aleafia Health in May.
And now Big Pharma has taken over, and it's not to exclude anybody or to divide, but simply to say there is a lot of white money in that, and maybe we can do something to diversify that and maybe give back to the communities that we have taken so much from.
The group Cannabis Amnesty says Black and Indigenous people across Canada are between 3 and 6 times more likely to be arrested for possession, even though research shows cannabis use is relatively the same across all races. Some jurisdictions in the U.S. and Europe are using tax dollars from legal weed to help balance the scale.
That's not really done here in Canada, unfortunately. There could be things done where we help to provide employment opportunities so that kind of knowledge trust of individuals who have worked around the plant can transition into the community. That hasn't been done. There could be programs to provide equity so that people of color can transition and work in the cannabis sector and be stakeholders and be operators and have equity. That also hasn't been done.
It's still a complicated process for those applying for the pardons promised by the feds. Nkombe says that easing that process and having police address the racial disparity should be the next step.
There should be no shame in going back and saying, you know what, this community, although I thought I might have been doing something, maybe I've taken more than I've given back. And maybe that's why the divide exists right now.
The Cannabis Act calls for a review of legalization next year, and James says that advocates will be pushing for changes to be made that will help those communities who have been harmed the most. Tammie Sutherland, City News.